One of the most common questions that we get about our curriculum is regarding the annotation process. To put it simply, annotation just means that you're taking notes as you read through a text. We understand that annotation looks different for each student and is going to vary drastically depending on the text that you're using. We wanted to create a video that breaks down the annotation process to provide you with a little bit more guidance and to give you and your student the confidence to use the annotation process in an effective way. So we know from our time in the classroom and teaching the annotation process that students are going to come back with a wide variety of results. Some are highlighting marking very minimally in the text, some are highlighting entire paragraphs or pages. So essentially this annotation strategy that we have is a roadmap for students to use as they annotate. This will help them to focus on what's important in the text and not get bogged down with wondering whether or not they're taking notes correctly. Like I said before, the annotation process is simply a note-taking strategy for reading a text. We know from research that this active reading strategy helps with retention and comprehension, and this is going to allow you to get the most out of our units. Yes, we understand that writing in a book can be strange, even taboo, but we strongly suggest that you get a new or gently used copy of the text that you need for the unit. The reason for this is because the annotation process is most effective if it takes place in real time, which means as the student is reading, they are marking up the text. We would like to reiterate that the annotation process is very subjective. It's going to look different for each student. Remember that this is a skill that the student is developing. So at first, it might be a little awkward as they engage in the text, but as they continue to persevere through the annotation process, this reading strategy will help them to develop as a reader and a writer. It will get easier. In all of our units, we provide an annotation guide that provides you with specific things to look for as you read the text. This can be found in the student workbook and also the parent guide. So now Bethany is going to go over this annotation guide with you, and then we're going to provide a very thorough example of what annotation looks like in real time.
Okay, so for each unit, there is going to be an annotation guide provided that will tell students exactly what they need to look for as they annotate the text. Again, annotating is just making notes and comments in the text as they read. So over here on the left, you're going to see that they're going to be asked to highlight. The guide is going to tell them what they're highlighting. They're going to highlight powerful words or phrases or details they think are important or noteworthy. Then the action they're going to take, or the comment that they're going to make in the margin, is explain why you think these words or phrases are powerful or important or noteworthy. This can be just a few words jotted down in the margins of the text that's helping them remember why they highlighted that portion of the text in the first place. The next thing that we're wanting them to do is circle unknown vocabulary. We want them to try to use context clues to figure out the meanings of these words or phrases, but we also want them to use a dictionary if needed. It's really helpful if students record the definition in the margins so that they're able to better understand the portion of the text that contains the unknown word. From there, we want students to put question marks next to any information that causes them to question. And then we want them to write that question in the margins of the text. This is going to naturally cause their brains to be looking for those answers as they continue to read, which is going to improve reading comprehension and help them make connections. The next thing we want students to do is place exclamation points next to information that they find surprising, shocking, or exciting. Then we want them to jot down why they find it surprising, exciting. This is their opinion. There's no right or wrong way to do this. So they're just making note of things that they think is exciting or surprising, and then jotting down a few words to say why. We'd like students to place arrows when they make a connection to the text, idea, or experiences. So they're going to write the connection down in the margins, explain what it means. We also want them to consider looking for connections to journal prompts that they have been answering as they're progressing through the unit as well. Finally, we want students to be looking for each element that they are going to need to interact with in their reading logs. So for this particular example, students are looking for academic vocabulary for their specific reading logs. So under the action, we have identify and label the academic vocabulary as you read the text. This is going to help students as they complete their reading logs, because as they read the text and are identifying those pieces of academic vocabulary, they're going to be making note of that as they read. And then when they go to complete their reading log, all they have to do is flip back over the chapters that they've read, and they're already going to have those components identified in the text, which is going to make their reading logs easier. It's really important that students try to do this as they read. We want them to work smarter, not harder. Following the annotation guide is going to save them countless hours as they go to do future assignments, especially the reading logs. On the following page, we have an example of annotating the text. This is an excerpt from Into the Wild, page 4, and as you can see, we have done each component of the annotation guide. You can see that circling this word, it's been labeled unknown vocabulary. The definition has been, or some adjectives of that word has been jotted down so that the student knows what that means in that context. We have a question mark drawn to this portion of the text right here. And the question asks is, what was he thinking? The questions that students are asking as they annotate don't have to be super profound or thought-provoking. Just any question that they have as they read, we want to encourage them to jot down in the margins of the text. You can see that powerful words or details that are considered noteworthy has been highlighted. A little bit of notes have been jotted down. Academic vocabulary has been identified, so as the student goes to complete their reading logs, they're going to be able to know exactly where they should be looking in the text for completing the allusion portion of their academic vocabulary reading log. We also have an example of what it means to make a connection here. It says, the last frontier was what the journal was about before reading this text, and now I understand why. Now, if you've never annotated before and you're looking at this paragraph and you think that this looks incredibly overwhelming, do not worry. This paragraph shows all of the elements of annotation all within one small portion of the text. This is not what every single paragraph should look like as you read. Students should be aiming to identify these things as frequently as possible, but these are going to be spread out throughout the chapters. So you can have multiple paragraphs that don't have any annotations on them, and then you might have one annotation on one page and 3 on the next page. It's going to be spread out as students are reading, and it's not going to be as condensed as the example you see on the screen. Now let's actually read a passage together, and you can see what it looks like as we annotate it.
This annotation example is using The Handmaid's Tale, which is a dystopian story. And for this example, it's not important that you understand the story or even the excerpt that I'm reading out loud to you. What I want to focus on is just providing an example of what annotation looks like in real time. A chair, a table, a lamp, above on the white ceiling, a relief ornament in the shape of a wreath, and in the center of it, a blank space, plastered over like the place in a face where the eye has been taken out. There must have been a chandelier once. They've removed anything you could tie a rope to. So I'm actually going to underline this part because it feels like it's a reference to suicide. So I'm going to write suicide there with a question mark. A window, 2 white curtains. Under the window, a window seat with a little cushion. When the window is partly open, it only opens partly. The air can come in and make the curtains move. I can sit in the chair or on the window seat, hands folded, and watch this. Sunlight comes in through the window too and falls on the floor, which is made of wood in narrow strips, highly polished. I can smell the polish. There's a rug on the floor, oval, of braided rags. This is the kind of touch they like. Who is they? So I'm going to underline this and write on the side, who is they? Folk art, archaic, made by women in their spare time from things that have no further use. A return to traditional values. Waste not, want not. I'm not being wasted. Why do I want? On the wall above the chair, a picture framed but with no glass. A print of flowers, blue irises, watercolor. Flowers are still allowed. Does each of us have the same print, the same chair, the same white curtains, I wonder? Government issue? Think of it as being in the army, said Aunt Lydia. Who is Aunt Lydia? Since it's referencing like somebody that I should know. a bed, a single mattress, medium hard, covered with a flocked white spread. Nothing takes place in the bed but sleep, or no sleep. I try not to think too much. Like other things now, thought must be rationed. There's a lot that doesn't bear thinking about. So I'm just kind of curious as to why thought must be rationed. There's a lot that doesn't bear thinking about. Thinking can hurt your chances, and I intend to last. So I'm also going to underline this because I'm curious as to what she's talking about, what chances are possibly being harmed by thinking, and then what is she lasting out on. I know why there is no glass in front of the watercolor picture of blue irises, and why the window only opens partly, and why the glass in it is shatterproof. It isn't running away they're afraid of. We wouldn't get far. It's those other escapes, the ones you can open in yourself given a cutting edge. So this kind of confirms what I thought on the previous page about suicide. So I'm going to just make a note here about why people in this society would want to be killing themselves. So apart from these details, this could be a college guest room for the less distinguished visitor, or a room in a rooming house of former times for ladies in reduced circumstances. This is what we are now. The circumstances have been reduced for those of us who still have circumstances. So I'm also going to make a notation here because I'm doing the dystopian unit, and one of the themes of that is loss of individualism, and this kind of connects with that. So the circumstances have been reduced for those of us who still have circumstances. I'm not sure if the narrator has any circumstances, so I don't know if she's clumping herself with that, but I want to make a notation there as far as individualism goes. But a chair, sunlight, flowers, these are not to be dismissed. I am alive. I live, I breathe, I put my hand out unfolded into the sunlight. Where I am is not a prison, but a privilege, as Aunt Lydia said, who was in love with either or. Thanks for watching. We're Prairie and Pine Curriculum. Please remember that if you have any questions, you can reach out to us through our email, through this YouTube channel, or either of our social media pages.